What's going on, Liberty Networking family? My name is Jamie Cherio, and welcome to the Liberty Lounge. I am here on our next episode with our founder of Liberty Networking, Mr. Jimmy Sorrells. How we doing, Jimmy?
And I'm doing fantastic.
And I'm excited today to introduce our special guest. But before we do, Jimmy, just tell us a little bit about what this podcast is about and what we believe here at Liberty Networking.
And so Liberty Networking is a in-person network organization that brings like-minded people together that share the same morals and values. And we are about building authentic relationships. That's really what it is, authentic long-term relationships to grow each other's business through connections and referrals. So our core values are liberty and integrity, and our core focus is what I just said, building authentic long-term connections.
And what is your hope in bringing on special guests here to this podcast?
Well, I would like to promote their business, and if somebody needs any of their services, this is an easy way to kind of understand their entrepreneur journey and bring value from that as well, because, we can all relate to what a person's been through. So it may, it's not like they just woke up one day and they're like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. No, there's a journey to get there. So you can relate to that and find success tips within their story and how to overcome things, as well as promoting their business if somebody needs their services.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to welcome on our special guest today, Mr. John Clark. John, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. John is the owner, president. What are you of the optimization specialists?
Yeah, co-founder. So I'm one co-founder. My other co-founder, Christy, she lives in Texas.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us just a little bit about you. There's a lot of people on here, some watching, maybe a part of your chapter might know you, but so many other people across the other, 15, 16 chapters that they don't know you, they don't know your story. So tell us a little bit about how you got here, because I'm not sure if, when you were a little kid, you woke up and said, I want to get into technology when I grow up, or, how you got here. So just give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so like most stories, definitely a roller coaster. Growing up, originally, to your point, in high school, was looking to become an engineer. Did a couple of engineering classes in high school, even went to college for a couple of years, and realized that I didn't want to spend all day doing the math to figure out the stress on a bolt, holding up the ceiling. So I actually transferred over into software development, which I finished out, getting a bachelor's in that. And then I worked in software for quite a few years, really just focusing on developing, best products possible. I was up in Northeast Ohio. In downtown Cleveland. I got to look out both windows and see the two different stadiums, which was great. But always had that longing, I guess, for entrepreneurship. Growing up, my aunt and uncle had a really small farm market, about like 3,500 square feet, but they did a lot of business through there. And I was like, this is the life I want to live, right? Like I get to make decisions. I can try things. Some things might fail, but at least I'm the one kind of pushing the buttons versus the one kind of carrying out the vision of the owner. So continuing on in software, I tried a couple different things. At one point, I was looking right before COVID, being a high school and college kind of speaker and author. I wrote a book, but a speaker and coach to students. So a lot of times we graduated college, all these kids were afraid to graduate. I'm like, what do you mean? We just dropped like 50 grand in student loans and you're not quite ready to graduate. So I was looking to help them out. And then COVID kind of hit, and it was kind of difficult to get in front of students because they were all locked in their houses, and their parents just wanted to make sure that they were, completing their classwork. They weren't really focused on the future. So kind of put that aside for a little bit, but realized that in this optimization space that I could really combine my background of software. And then really, I just love talking to business owners and learning about their challenges. And hey, if I can solve a lot of those challenges through technology, like this is the perfect piece, right? There's the passion there, there's the demand for it, and it could really turn into like a full-time gig. And that's kind of where we are today.
That's amazing. I mean, I think when we start talking about technology, I mean, it's like the monster in business that nobody wants to talk about. And like either you have like a, kind of a techie, founder like yourself who says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and figure it out. Or you get people who say, we're just going to stay old school forever because I am afraid of that. I don't understand that. I don't know how to learn that. Like, what is your, what do you say to business owners who are maybe a little bit more hesitant to add in technology, especially like in the world that we find ourselves in today?
Yeah, sure. So we really focus more on time savings. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there working, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And a lot of times they've really built themselves a new job. And, I always ask entrepreneurs, like, what is your dream? Is it to be, sipping margaritas on the beach? Is it spending more time with family? But a lot of that comes down to having the right systems in place and enough time to do that. So in most cases, we're focused on, helping them scale. But if you don't have the right systems in place, you also have to scale your workforce. So if in order to double your business, you have to double your workforce, like you're not really changing your margins much. And it makes it a lot easier if you've got those systems in place. So you can look at it from the 30,000 foot view while your team, on the ground floor can manage without you.
Walk us through your process. How do you identify where technology can be added to help save someone time and help create efficiency?
Yeah, so we really look at it in three different locations. There's the customer management, making sure that your customers are engaged and can communicate and understand what they're doing. There's the operations management, which is really, how you and your team work. As a team member, I should know what I need to work on without having to ask every day or, check on things. As an owner, I should know the status of everything without having to ask my team what it is. So making sure they're in the right spot. And then project management. So working with customers that have clients where there's constant projects, where they're doing event management or they're a marketing agency, they need to make sure that they can communicate properly with their customers so the customers don't feel left out. I've always been big on experiences, right? Even if you're at a restaurant and, there's some waitresses or waiters that like give you an amazing experience, right? Like I would love to tip them, 100% of what my bill was. And there's others that you can't even get their attention to like bring you a straw for your drink.
Right.
And so like, we really want to give our customers the VIP experience, but I love helping other businesses create that same experience for their customers.
That's good. I mean, just kind of hearing what you said, there's kind of three main, routes there. So you've got the new customer pipeline type of a management on the front end. How do we manage what part of the sales cycle, for instance, a new person's in that pipeline and not losing track, nobody falling through the cracks. Then you've got the internal business management. Like if Jimmy and I are on a team together, how do we work together? How do we assign tasks? How do we know who's doing what? And then how do we also take a pulse of what's going on inside of our business, the numbers, where they're at in the process, that kind of stuff. And then on the third part is for your current customers, what are you doing to keep them engaged, to manage projects that are happening inside of the business? Because a lot of the businesses I'm sure you work with, it's not just a make a sale and then you're done talking. It's like, no, it's make a sale and then the work actually begins now. Now we have to start your project and see where you're at in the process. Does that kind of sum up those three pipelines?
Yeah, that works. And then the only other leg with that, as far as project management, is, when we work with a franchise, really their customer is a franchisee, right? So like when they're getting ready to go launch a new location, they're focused on construction and things like that. They don't want to worry about the repetitive things. And if I'm a franchisee getting ready to buy something, I want to make sure you have all the systems in place. So it's making sure we can repeat that over and over.
So what are like the top, I don't know, 3 or 5 things that you find most successful for an entrepreneur to automate in their business?
Yeah, so really where our business started when we were just doing Monday.com implementations is a lot of business owners, they are very successful, but their entire business is based out of spreadsheets. So they have that 20-tab spreadsheet that they're tracking things, they're going in manually and checking statuses. And because it's so manual, again, typically they just kind of skip the spreadsheet and ask, hey, what's the status of this? So that's kind of where we really start, whether we're getting them into Monday, if they're using Monday, but we're also really bullish on ClickUp right now because it has a couple more features that we really like. But it's, again, giving you that 30,000 foot view at the leadership level and then like the ground level view if you're a team member. So that's where we always typically start. But a lot of times we see people that they're accepting technology, but they have like 8 different apps and they don't talk to each other. So they're duplicating their information. So we want to make sure that you have a central location where all the data flows. So that way, if you want to do reporting off of it, you can do that. And really, that's also where reporting comes in. So, from an analytics perspective, we want to know everything we can about our customer to understand like where they're coming from, who are our top customers. So that way, like, hey, how do we find that top 20% and just keep duplicating that over and over versus kind of spending our time looking at all of our customers. Like all customers are important, but we have those ones that we really like working with, and then we have those other ones that are like wasting a lot of our time. So if we can help you identify that through data and analytics and dashboards, then that's going to help you grow also. And then identifying bottlenecks. Same thing with that data, understanding like, hey, some of our processes we can get in and out the door very quickly. The other ones kind of drag a little bit more. we worked with a CPA, and we weren't helping him do his taxes or anything, but he wanted to see like how good are we at completing tax returns. And he's got, a very long client list, and he was doing this manually in spreadsheets. Every week he's running reports. So in about 2 weeks, we're able to get him up and running on Monday. So basically, hey, let me create a tax return for Dr. Smith. And then at the end, we know it took 5 days to do. They're up and running. Like we know the statuses. So he gets to see that control station to understand what's going on. And the team members can kind of track that. And every once in a while, he would be like, hey, you said you're going to get 5 done this week. We're only able to get 3. What's the challenge here? And they said, oh, well, they told us that their tax return was only X. And then when we pulled back the curtains, it was way more. So like very quickly, they can identify like, here's the bottleneck, and then either, mitigate it or identify like how to fix it from there.
That's good. Where are you incorporating AI in your processes?
Yeah, so one place we use AI right now, honestly, is just note taking. So when we're jumping on a call with a customer, that's the first thing that we definitely do. My partner, Christy, she's really good at the operations side. But and as we start bringing in VAs, we want to basically say, like, here's all the notes, here's the quick action items. Can you go and execute on this? The other place would just be kind of chat bots. We're not doing lead management or anything like that. With the one fitness location we're working with, people always message in or call in for the same questions. Like, hey, I lost my water bottle. What are your hours, right? Which in today's Google world, you're like, how do you not know what the hours are? But there's different questions. So we'll be able to create a chat bot to let them answer those. So again, time savings. There's somebody at the front desk that their job is better spent selling memberships versus answering the phone to tell them what their hours are or information on what the cold plunge is.
Yeah. And I think when you hear AI, there's a lot of people like, oh, AI, like I need AI. And like when you like, I'm a big, CRM nerd and AI, all that stuff. But like you'd mentioned chatbots. A lot of times chatbots actually don't even use AI. They're using a lot of like logic-based processing. Like, hey, if they ask one of these 10 questions, here's the answer. And if they reply with this, here's your 3 or 4 different answers, positive response, negative response. And a lot of the time that is plenty effective than going and trying to find an AI guru for you to have your own Siri for your business that can answer all the questions and have a personality. Not all business owners need that, but they think they do. Because like, oh, I hear about other people using AI, but there's a lot of very simple solutions out there, like a chatbot that feels like AI, that's actually not AI, and it's a lot easier to set up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And with AI too, again, when we're going into a business and they don't really have any automations in their business, AI can be really scary, right? Because like we're really kind of giving them at least the intro into it, and then it might grow from there. But yeah, AI, to your point, I mean, it's everywhere at this point. And, I like using it for the simple tools, video editing. That's another one I like, using Opus Clip, of just being able to upload an entire conversation and it finds those 1-minute clips. That's great. I'm not a video editor, right? Like we go back to, if you listen to Dan Martell and Buy Back Your Times, like let's focus on the things that give me energy and I'm really good at, and we'll hand off the other things. In some case, that might be a person, but in other cases, that might just be an AI upload.
That's good.
Let's shift gears here a little bit. More general business. Like, what are some lessons that you've maybe learned along the way? Some struggles, mistakes, new skills you've had to learn, personal development breakthroughs. Like, what's like a moment that you can think back to in your business owner career that was like light bulb moment?
Yeah, for me, it's going all in on something. So when I was doing the student coaching business, I was focused on that, but I never stepped back and said, like, how am I going to get from A to B? It was one of those things, like I've seen everybody else do it, or I say everybody else, you've seen other people do it. And, they always say, well, I'm no smarter than you are. Like you can do this too. And so you kind of just jump into it and hope that the answers will come, when really, like, you really need to you need to create that roadmap before you start executing. And now, opposite to that, you want to make sure that you're not trying to get stuck in perfection. So that's another thing I used to do, of like, hey, like, let me get this website perfect before we publish it, or let me get this blog post or this social media post perfect before we post it. And it's taken me a while to learn that like done is better than perfect, and trying to get those out the door. Those are probably my 2 biggest lessons. Pivoting always happens, I think, in business, but just making sure you're making the right pivot, not getting stuck in shiny object syndrome. Those are typically my downfalls.
Yeah, it's really easy to get stuck in shiny object syndrome, especially in your business. I mean, you could really work with anybody and you can offer just about any service to help make their business run better. So like, how do you figure out like what your core focus is in regards to like, okay, I can offer the world. I'm sure you've got a lot more skills than what your main core offer is, but like, how did you develop like, hey, this is what we're going to actually, spend the most of our time focusing on in terms of who's our favorite clients and here's the best services that we could do?
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of figuring that out along the way, but we've definitely found things that we're going to say no to. Um, in the beginning, it was saying yes to everybody, to your point, regardless of the size of the company. One thing we found is a lot of solo businesses, I would love to help them, but when it's just them and they don't have time, they also don't have time to kind of work with us to implement. So I'll go away and do an entire implementation, but they're too busy to kind of start using it. And
Mm.
like, sure, they already paid me, but like, that's not why I'm doing that. Oh, we all do it to make money, but I want to make sure that you're actually using this. Like, that's where I get excited. And one of our first customers, he said, I think John is more excited about this implementation than I am. And like, I think he was right. And like, that's kind of cool for me from a customer service standpoint, but also from a business standpoint, I don't necessarily want to help those people. I want to help the people that are going to, shave off 20% of their, they're going to save 20% in their week. So that was one thing that we definitely found. And then when you start listening to different agency coaches, right? Like we're kind of in that agency space for ourselves. It's like, how do you get to become a 7-figure business? And it's not doing custom implementations for everybody. So we've started a pivot of like really trying to understand our core offer, and making sure that we can repeat that as much as possible. And, whether that's through a CRM or ClickUp, there definitely is some customization. Not no two businesses are the same, but by us kind of going in on the health and wellness space and the franchise space, at least we know like we build it for one location, then we can copy and paste it for other locations.
Makes
And that's
sense.
the biggest focus that we've done, because our franchise companies are like helping us scale in a way, but they love it because like we build them exactly what they need. They don't have to buy it off the shelf and figure it out themselves, but then we can replicate it to all their locations. And again, as a new location opens, they could focus on the construction, but they know that like the tech side of things is handled and they don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, it's like you're automating your automation systems. I mean, you're just
Yeah,
duplicating. Yeah, that makes sense. You got a template basically, right?
exactly. Yeah. And the templates, might be a little bit different from business to business, but yeah, once we can replicate it, that makes their jobs easier and they don't have to worry about it.
So, obviously a certain size business probably needed certain level of revenue, certain level of processes for your particular offering to actually make sense. But let's like zoom out a little bit and let's go and look at a new business owner, just more of a general perspective. What can a new business owner do? Like explain it to a kindergartner almost, to start to automate their business. Like what are some free tools or some low cost tools that they can use for someone who's maybe not ready for the full
Mhm.
suite of services that something like you offers, but they do want to implement maybe one or two things that you've mentioned?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, it's identifying what you want to automate. So in many cases, when you are either entering data into locations, that's like the first sign of like, hey, I need to potentially automate this. And two is anything that you're doing repetitively. So that's kind of where we always start. Um, Zapier and Make.com are the two like no code tools out there. Some of them, Zapier, they have a lot of templates out there. If when I get a calendar booking, automatically add it to my Google Sheets, right? They have a lot of recipes out there that you can just connect your two accounts and it'll automatically do that. That to me is always the best place to start. But if you're going more into the project management side, I would start looking at Monday or ClickUp. Monday has a little bit easier of a learning curve. But there are different things that come with that. And then there's ClickUp that we're using, but then there's a longer learning curve. But for me, getting out of spreadsheets is great. And then inside of both Monday and or ClickUp, they have those automations. So it's basically when the status changes, notify somebody. Like that to me is like it's such a simple thing to implement, but such a huge value, because that way, if I'm waiting on somebody to complete their job, I don't have to keep bugging them or like checking in on it. I automatically get notified when they get complete with it. So even if you don't have your stuff in the item and you truly just like click a button when you're done so I can notify the next person in line, to me, that's a huge value add from an automation standpoint.
Powerful. I love it, man. All right. Tell us something interesting or surprising that nobody listening to this podcast might know about you personally.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to my student. One of the reasons I got into the student coaching, and this is the fact that I had a son at 19, actually a week before my 19th birthday. So in some ways, I could have become that statistic of, drop out of college, like, manage all this. But luckily, I had a supportive family, pushed through, and, here I am, however many years later, 10 years after college graduation, and like things are going really good. So I think that's always a big story that I tell people. Because first of all, people look at me knowing that I have a 14-year-old son, like, you look young. I'm like, yes, this is exactly how young I was when he was born. But it was one of those things that it happened, and it was definitely an event in my life. But I looked at it as like, this isn't going to stop me, because I knew like what I was capable of. So that's one thing I always like sharing with people, because we all get challenges in life. It's going to happen on your entrepreneur journey. But it's one thing I like to look back, like, if you accomplished that and like you were able to balance, job, family, all these things, then a small hiccup along the way is going to be really simple to push through.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
All right, transition one more time, and we're going to talk about networking specifically. So anybody listening to this, for the most part, they're either a member or aspiring member of Liberty Networking. And, we talked a little bit about the purpose of why that was created, but talk to us about what has your experience been in networking groups? Had you been a part of other networking groups in the past? And just how has networking been beneficial for you?
Yeah. So my first bit inside of networking, I would say, was just going to different networking events. When I moved to Charleston, I joined the chamber as like a young professional. That was mostly like, let's go to baseball games together, let's go to happy hours together. But then as I started building my business, I realized like I need to talk to other business owners more often. So the chamber was still a great place to do that. But there's different business owners there that are also kind of in it for themselves, right? Like, as business owners, we need to scale, and sometimes we go to those things like, what's in it for me? How do I hand out cards? How do I find the next best partner, the next best client? And so I kind of went in, and I really just enjoy talking to people about business. And I've always kind of gone in with that curious mindset. So somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm 5 years in owning a landscaping business. I'm like, that's so cool. Like, how did this start? Was this just you and a tractor? Like, what was this like? Because I just love to hear like that American dream story of, I was in corporate, I stopped, and things like that. And for me, that's always gone a long way. And, I might talk to 15 people and I might get one potential client out of it, or I might get none. But for me, becoming the person in the room that's kind of asking those questions goes a really long way, because the next time I go to a networking event and I see that same person, they're like, hey, have you met John? Did you know that he does optimization? And like, a lot of my introductions have happened that way, where I talk to a person that we aren't right fit for each other because they don't quite have the right business, but then they recommend me to somebody. And that's the way to me, if I've made that much of an impression, that's the right way to do networking.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the other things that's probably happened for you is you're in the type of business that serves other businesses. So by talking to other business owners, you've identified problems that a lot of business owners deal with on a daily basis when it comes to the things that you offer and serve. So it's also like, maybe you didn't get a client out of it, but you did some great market research every single time that you had a really good conversation with somebody.
Yeah, my hardest thing is not to nerd out with them, right? Like, when they mention something, I'm like, oh, we could do this automation. Like, I'm not trying to sell them. I'm just instantly in my head thinking of like, here's the different ways that we could help in that scenario. I talked to a real estate agent, I talked to a landscape owner, all those different things. So yeah, I've been very careful not to try to talk about myself, right? That's kind of one of the golden rules of networking, but at times it's hard to not go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, it's B2B has always been interesting, because a lot of times in networking groups, I meet other people that are B2C. And I always sometimes think they have it a little bit easier, because I talked to a loan officer, and I know 20 people at some point over in the next, maybe 2 years that are going to need a loan officer. And it's kind of easy for me to recommend. But for B2B, you have to kind of know what the challenges are of your friends that are other business owners. So like, I'm in a unique scenario that until you kind of pull back the curtains and are a little bit vulnerable with me with your challenges, then I'm not going to be able to help you. And in many cases, talking to a business owner, they don't know those other challenges.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's definitely a big struggle when it comes to B2B. But like, for you, it's like, when you're not always looking for, hey, can I help this specific business? But who's a business owner here who's a great connector? Who's someone who knows other business owners that could be that person for me, that could be that referral machine of, hey, I know this person over here who could use this solution. So I think it's just important when you're joining a networking group to understand like what it is that you are coming in for. And maybe you are looking for just a direct referral, like, hey, give me business. But then a lot of people are looking for connections. They're looking for someone who can be that connector to other business owners, to other referrals, et cetera. So that's big. Last thing that we're going to really dig into, somebody's maybe watching this, they're on the edge of like, should I join Liberty Networking? What could I hope or maybe expect to get out of it? Which is kind of a loaded question, because you're not going to get anything out that you don't put into it. But like, what is your perspective behind someone who's maybe on the edge of like, is this going to be worth it for me or not?
Yeah. So for me, I joined after my first visit. Jimmy happened to be at that event, and it was really good to understand exactly what Liberty Networking stands for. And I think for me, you get back what you put in it, but there are times that like family happens, and I don't want to be like, I don't want things held against me because I can't make a networking event, or I missed this or that. And I think with Liberty Networking, we definitely kind of create that family vibe in a way. We are checking in on each other outside of the meetings. We meet in our chapter, we meet every 2 weeks, but outside of that, social media, we're recommending people. So when you get into those community Facebook groups and people are asking, hey, who would you recommend for a loan officer? Like I instantly know who to respond and tag them and things like that. So I really like that piece of it. And it's not so official, I guess, or all the red tape, but we still build those connections, and we're still gaining business partners from it.
Yeah. So take just like a minute or two and just kind of plug yourself, plug your business, talk about how can people get a hold of you, where can they follow you, your business website, and specifically maybe who you're looking to work with, who would be a great partner or connection for you.
Yeah, sure. So the optimization specialists, which it takes about typing that 10 times until you can type it properly. It's in my email address too, so I finally learned how to type it. But yeah, the optimization specialists, we're really focused on saving business owners time and removing that chaos and overwhelm. So on average, from all of our customers, we're saving business owners themselves at least 10 hours a week, and that's not including the team members that we're saving time with. And really, it's one of those things of like, hey, if you're really successful, but you feel like you don't have enough time in a week, we're here to help. If your business is really based out of spreadsheets, we would love to get you into a project management solution. But what we're really looking to connect with people is at the franchise level, because a franchisor, an emerging brand, there's 100 different things that you're focused on right now. And if we can help you with your customer engagement and pre-sales, that's one of the first ways that we help. But also when it comes to deploying and selling more locations, we would love to be your partner in helping you do that from a tech side. So that way you can focus on the more important things as far as sales go.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. We're excited that we were able to have you and get some really great, knowledge on the technology and automation side. Guys, we are on here every week, every Monday, 8 a.m., interviewing a new business owner, new professional salesperson, entrepreneur, somebody here in Liberty Networking, and bringing value every single week. So we look forward to chatting with you guys again, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye for now. Thank you.